Republicans have an increase. Plus 100,000 in Pennsylvania.
Hi, guys.
40,000, I think, here in North Carolina.
We have presidential debate
5,000 in Florida.
2020.
But our friends at 538, George, they'll tell us
We'll
why
watch
this is a
it,
little bit more
okay?
complicated. Still, Republicans like these numbers. I do want to say, what do you make of
You watch it with me,
these early numbers?
okay? Live
I'm not sure it's hugely indicative.
presidential debate 2020.
Primarily because of his big lead with independent voters, where he's ahead by 15 or 20 points with independents in some polls. I think you will ultimately have high GOP turnout in the end. You already have high Democratic turnout. But I think Trump, his whole flaw strategically is focusing too much on his base when we know that the Democratic base will also turn out, and you have to win independents. You cannot lose them at least by 15 points in an election today.
And Nate, how about that number that Lindsay brought up earlier, the significant percentage of first-time voters showing up in the early vote?
Yeah, so we are now projecting that turnout might wind up somewhere in the neighborhood of 155 million voters. There's a range there. It could be 140 or 160 or 165. That's way up from 137 in 2016. So it necessarily means you're going to have a lot of first-time voters, or maybe someone who voted for Obama in 2012, was turned off by Clinton, and is now going to vote again for one candidate or another in 2020.
Nate Silver, thanks very much. The Roundtable's next. We'll be right back.
Trillions of costumes, starting at $9.99. Mix it, match it. You do you. Only at Party City.
We're so embarrassed we overpaid for this used car. We don't even want to show our faces around here.
If you don't see me, you're not seeing the most accurate price. Shop at Carfax. You won't have to overpay on a used car again. Shop millions of great deals at the all-new Carfax.com.
Thinking about your financial plan? So are we. Prudential helps 25 million people with their financial needs. With over 90 years of investment experience, our thousands of financial professionals can help. Go to Prudential.com or talk to an advisor.
We are heading towards the 2020 presidential election. How to ensure your vote counts. COVID-19 I think I'm already registered. Can we vote by mail here?
Recheck.
Thank you. You'll be safe, right? Yes.
Go out and vote. It's so important. Woo! It's the most important thing you can do.
I tried a new laxative that's both gentle and fast.
New great tasting Dogalax. Your body in as little as 30 minutes. Puts you comfortably in control. New Dogalax Soft Chews.
5G just got real. iPhone 12 and iPhone 12 Pro are here on Verizon 5G with the coverage of 5G nationwide and in more and more cities, the performance of 5G ultra wideband. Get iPhone 12 on us when you switch. Only on Verizon.
I'm going to change your life.
Oh my gosh.
I think I'm the shark for you.
You're a rock star.
Big moment for you here. You get this shot once.
New Shark Tank Friday on ABC.
America is being swept away to return to the classic game show.
Supermarket sweep!
And host Leslie Jones is the bomb.
Never giving money away, especially when it ain't mine.
Supermarket Sweep, new Sunday at 8 on ABC.
Live
Live from Nashville, Tennessee, and ABC News Election Headquarters, this is a 2020 special, the final presidential debate. Here again, George Stephanopoulos.
Just about 45 minutes from now, the candidates will take the stage. We're going to bring in our roundtable of analysts. Let me start with Chris Christie. Chris, it's been a pretty eventful 3 weeks for you since the first debate. You contracted and recovered, thank goodness, from COVID. You were part of the president's formal debate prep last time around, not this time. What are you expecting? Do you think he believes he hurt himself last time?
Listen, I think he's come to the conclusion that a different strategy needs to be undertaken tonight. And I believe that he will undertake a different strategy tonight. And I think, really, George, what you're dealing with here is a very, very known quantity in President Trump. He's been in everybody's living room almost nonstop for the last 4.5 years. They know who he is. What they don't know is what he would do with 4 more years. And he needs to address that tonight. That's his challenge. Joe Biden, even though he's been in public life for 47 years, at this level is still, because of the nature of this campaign with COVID and not being out nearly as much as the president or a normal presidential candidate, is still a bit of an unknown quantity. And so tonight he's got to decide, how does he deal with that? Does he continue to kind of stay in punt formation and just try to punt the ball and run out the clock? Or does he try to be more assertive tonight? I think those are the 2 options you're looking at this evening for the candidates if they're going to be smart about it. And it should be a very interesting evening.
Thank you, Chris. Rahm Emanuel, let's pick up on that right now. Right now, at least, this race is still a referendum on the president. He's got to turn it into a choice election.
Yeah, he's got to, and it's very, very late in the evening to do that. I would say, in this case, Donald Trump cannot get out of his own way. Attacking the reporters in this effort, reminding the Americans that's what you're going to get for 4 more years. They are exhausted over the last 3.5 years. And Donald Trump, yes, he's made it a referendum because he's never made it a binary choice, and he hasn't run on an agenda for the future. I think actually, if I was Joe Biden tonight, is to go back to the most important thing. The attacks on me personally or my family are nothing like the attacks your kids are going to take if we don't turn this country around. And laser-like focus on the American families, their children, their future, and totally ignore the attack and be right in the camera. And that's what we should be debating tonight, into the core message, in the country together. And I don't think, I would say this, it's got to be aggressive about the future. You don't have a lead up. I think Donald Trump has to hit a grand slam. Joe Biden has to hit a single. And that's how it's going to get scored.
Sarah Fagan, Republican strategist, what's a grand slam for President Trump?
Well, I think it's a couple things. The most important thing for the president tonight, I think, is to be normal. One of his best performances in this campaign, George, I thought was with the town hall you did several weeks ago. He was calm. He answered the questions. He wasn't overly combative. You actually heard some substance from him that evening. He's got to do that again tonight. And when you look at polling, he underperforms a generic Republican many times. It suggests there's some low-hanging fruit for him yet in this election. Those voters, they don't like him. They do like his policies. He's got to give them something tonight, a reason to go Catholic for him.
Okay, Sarah, thanks very much. Yvette Simpson, Lindsay pointed out at the top of the program, only about 3% at most probably of truly undecided voters at this point. So the real job for both candidates is to turn out those who are already committed, get enthusiasm going.
Right, and also make sure folks who have already voted go out and get everybody they know. This is a mobilization effort on the part of Democrats. We all know a young person. We all know someone who's a neighbor who's not voted. How do we get those folks who we know are registered, who might be disenfranchised, to go out and vote? And so this is all about making sure we have folks who are going to be dragging people, strolling, getting folks out as much as they can. And I think with a week like we've had this week, with the deflation we're feeling around the Supreme Court, with the fact that the Senate is not taking up a COVID bill, this is a great time to get folks who don't traditionally vote out to the polls. And so I would say all those volunteers who have already voted, get out and get your neighbors and your friends and anyone who has not voted to vote.
Okay, let me bring in Matthew Dowd as well. Thank you, Yvette. One of the big questions, how much does this debate matter with almost 50 million Americans already voting?
Well, I think that's the untold story. And one thing I think the Presidential Commission is going to have to do in the future is put the debates much earlier because, as was explained earlier, nearly 50 million people have already voted. We've never seen anything like that, George. I look back in history, and the most any other time that where we had a last debate where people had voted was less than 5 million people, and we're at 50 million people. I think there's three things that should be of concern to Donald Trump, and it's not about what's going to happen on the debate stage. First, 50 million people have already voted. Those are votes in the bank you cannot change. Second, as Lindsay said, only 3% of the folks are undecided. We haven't seen a number like that in 25 years. Excuse me. And third, the stability of this race, George. Joe Biden has led by 6 points, 7 points, 8 points, 9 points, and now roughly 10 points through the course of this time since March. That's a very stable race. Donald Trump has never taken a lead in this race, and he's never gotten within 1 or 2 points in this race. All of that points to a difficult job Donald Trump's going to have to do. He can't move undecideds and think he's going to win this race. He has to move voters who haven't already cast a vote for Joe Biden, who are for Joe Biden, to himself in this race. That's a much more difficult process to handle in this than moving somebody that's undecided to you. You have to move somebody off somebody else to you in 10 days.
Matt Dowd, thanks very much. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, more on foreign interference in this election.
At T-Mobile, we believe you should get more. That's why we have the most satisfied customers in wireless. And it's about to get even better. Sprint is now a part of T-Mobile, and our nationwide 5G keeps getting stronger as we integrate Sprint's network into ours, giving us the capacity and coverage to reach more people and places across the country. This is America's network. A 5G network that will let us stream new experiences and help us connect to the world around us like never before. With T-Mobile, experience a leader in 5G and so much more. Who says you can't have it all? Now is the time for 5G. Now is the time to join T-Mobile.
Skip to cold really fast with Alka-Seltz. Instantly ready to start working. So fast.
It's the final days of Ashley Home Store's lowest prices of the season sale. Shop queen beds starting at just $3.99 and living room essentials as low as $4.49. Or get 0% interest for 72 months. Ashley Home Store. This is home. Oh, can we stop? It's McDonald's. Oh, come on. It's so good.
It's on the McDonald's $1, $2, $3 menu. Get your faves for a few bucks like any size soft drink for just $1.
Asthma symptoms can attack anywhere. Get fast relief here with Privatine Mist. FDA approved and available over the counter for mild asthma. It works quickly to restore free breathing. Privatine Mist. Breathe easy again.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, and the #1 show on all of television. #1 in late night versus the competition. #1 in politics versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show. And #1 in streaming news. Most trusted, most #1 news.
Some leaders put country first, like General Don Bacon. Among the most bipartisan members of Congress, Bacon delivered tax cuts for families and helped save Offutt. But Kara Eastman, she's the last thing Nebraska needs. Eastman and her allies, Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders, will raise taxes and support government-run health care. That's why Pelosi is backing Eastman's campaign. This choice is clear. Vote Bacon. ESA Fund is responsible for the content of this message.
Nebraskans have come together in this pandemic, helping keep each other safe. But not Don Bacon. While families are struggling, Bacon would make things even tougher. He wants to raise the retirement age for Nebraska that could cut Social Security benefits by $3,000 a year. Now, more than ever, Nebraska needs a new representative. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Octavia Spencer, and from that hair, comedian Jay Farrow. Jimmy Kimmel Live, new tonight on ABC.
We are not going to tolerate foreign interference in our elections or any criminal activity that threatens the sanctity of your vote or undermines public confidence in the outcome of the election.
FBI Director Chris Wray right there. Let's get more on this now from our Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas. Pierre, we just saw the FBI Director there. Last night, an extraordinary announcement from the FBI Director and the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, announcing that it was the Iranians who were trying to interfere in this election.
That's right, George. It's a disturbing accusation that Russia and Iran have conducted counterintelligence operations secretly to obtain voter registration information about Americans, allowing them to directly reach out to voters. Now, my sources say while it's clear that Russia remains the primary threat to U.S. elections, things became extremely urgent this week when a series of emails were sent to Democratic voters in Florida warning them to vote for Trump or else. Authorities say Iran is behind that attack. Now, everyone is tense and on alert for the possibility of more disinformation campaigns as we head down the home stretch. But because we're in Washington, political shots are being fired. The Director of National Intelligence portrayed President Trump as the victim of the attack and did not mention one word about Democratic voters that were targeted, George.
And meanwhile, we saw the Democratic leader in the Senate, Charles Schumer, say he thought it was more of an attempt just to interfere and cause disruption in the entire election, not to target President Trump. Let me bring in our Chief Global Affairs anchor, Martha Radis, for more on this as well. So what exactly is the administration doing to defend against these attacks and counter them?
Well, George, I think critics will say they're not doing enough. We've been talking about this, of course, since 2016, and that's why the critics are zeroing in on this, because they say it's happening again to some degree. Now, the people working on it, military, cyber command, the NSA, even National Guard units from state to state, they have election security and cyber units that are looking at this at all times. But you just heard Chris Wray, and you also heard cyber command today and NSA say the U.S. will not tolerate foreign influence and interference in our elections. So I think the question is, what will they do about it after making a statement like that? Cyber Command in the past, in fact, June of 2019, reportedly took cyber offensive action against Iran. Iran had shot down a U.S. drone, millions and millions of dollars of a U.S. drone. And President Trump, if you remember, decided not to take military action in the last 10 minutes. So Cyber Command took over and targeted a database the Iranians had and shut down their targeting of ships in the Persian Gulf. They also shut down a Russian troll farm in 2018. So perhaps we'll see something like that. It's usually secret, but we have only a few days before election, George.
Okay, let's get more on this now from two former Homeland Security officials who dealt with this at the highest level. Secretary of Homeland Security under President Obama, Jay Johnson, Tom Bossert, who is President Trump's Homeland Security Advisor. And Jay, let me begin with you. We saw that publicizing of the Iranian interference yesterday, but consistently over the last several years now, it's been Russia that's posed the more serious threat.
Yes, so what is plain at this stage, George, is that all of the actions our government has taken that Martha just laid out have not been sufficient to deter the Russians or now the Iranians. I'm very concerned that the Russians, if open source reporting is to be believed, apparently have actually breached election systems, voter registration list, but we don't know at this stage exactly what the Russians intend to do with that information. George, this was my number one concern 4 years ago when we saw the scanning and probing around it structure, and we worked hard to encourage state election officials to seek our assistance. The Russians are at it again, and it appears that other actors have joined this space as well.
We know they've gone after voter registration rolls. Do we have any indication that they could actually reach into state systems and change the tabulation of votes?
I don't have any evidence that they have done that based upon what I read, but we cannot foreclose the possibility that a foreign actor, a bad actor, could in some way alter list, delete names, change the spelling of names in some way. which is why this is so concerning. But I must stress, however, George, that none of this controversy should discourage voters from going out and exercising their right and their responsibility in this election. Maximum voter participation is a way around this problem.
Jay Johnson, thanks very much. Let's bring in Tom Bossert for more on this. And Tom, you worked with us in the early days of the Trump administration. It always seems there have been two different tracks under President Trump. On the one hand, he at times has seemed to be amplifying Russian disinformation.
Yeah, and Secretary Johnson, on his way out of office, put us in a position with the authorities necessary to really help these state and local officials. So we're seeing that trend continue as we see DHS, FBI, Cyber Command, all of them coordinating with these counties. But I see President Trump continuing to deliver a different message. And George, if you will, I think tonight, although it's not normal for foreign policy to really affect the outcome of an election, in this instance, foreign influence is a part of this election, and I think it's absolutely incumbent on President Trump for him to deliver whatever message he intends to deliver to Putin and other like-minded officials. If he doesn't address that, I think the next 2 weeks are going to be continued interference, and those foreign leaders will assess that President Trump isn't serious about doing anything about it.
Let me follow up on that. If you were still in the White House right now as Homeland Security Director, what would you be most worried about in these final 11, 12 days?
Well, I separate the voting tolls, right, the tally machines, those things that can be interfered with in such a way that it affects the election. So far, we're seeing pretty good security around those devices. I echo Secretary Johnson's view that people should vote and not feel there's no integrity there. I'd be also probably more worried about the things around those tallying machines, information about where to vote and when a polling place is closed, even information about what the early results are. Those are all different systems that can be influenced. And one little small point that I picked up on in this reporting, George, this was a different aspect of the Russian government. This was the FSB, kind of akin to the KGB, loose cousin, not the GRU. We've normally seen their military cyber operations coming after our elections. This time we're seeing their KGB, legacy organization doing it. And so you have to wonder whether their intention is just to cause chaos, further chaos in the outcome of this election.
Tom Bossert, Jay Johnson, thanks very much. Less than a half hour ago till the final debate. We'll be right back.
Millions of people are saying yes to Allegra, including the experts. It's the #1 allergist-recommended brand for non-drowsy relief. Allegra works 2 times faster than Claritin, and while Zyrtec may cause drowsiness, Allegra won't. Say yes to Allegra.
You know what I think? I think you owe us $48.50. Wild thing.
If you ride, you get it. Of course, 50 minutes could save you 50% or more.
The Shark Vac Mop. The all-in-one disposable pad that vacuums up debris other pads push around. Then it spray mops tough messes. Just vacuum, then spray, and toss. The Shark Vac Mop.
Once weekly Ozempic is helping many people with type 2 diabetes like Emily lower their blood sugar. A majority of adults who took Ozempic reached an A1C under 7 and maintained it.
Here's your A1C.
Oh, my A1C is under 7.
And you may lose weight. Adults who took Ozempic lost on average up to 12 pounds.
I lost almost 12 pounds.
Oh! For those
Those also with known heart disease, Ozempic lowers the risk of major cardiovascular events such as heart attack, stroke, or death.
It lowers the risk. Oh. And I only have to take it once a week. Oh.
Ozempic is not for people with type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Do not share needles or pens. Don't reuse needles. Do not take Ozempic if you have a personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer, multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2, or if you are allergic to Ozempic. Stop taking Ozempic and get medical help right away if you get a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, itching, rash, or trouble breathing. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis. Tell your doctor if you have diabetic or vision changes. Taking Ozempic with sulfonylurea or insulin may increase low blood sugar risk. Common side effects are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, stomach pain, and constipation. Some side effects can lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems.
Once weekly Ozempic, helping me reach my blood sugar goal.
You may pay as little as $25 for a 1-month or 3-month prescription. Ask your healthcare provider today about once-weekly Ozempic. Friday.
A man who swears he's innocent, he's on death row, and the clock is ticking.
The evidence was the word of a fraud.
But this is a guy who was a professional con man, and he knew it. Absolutely.
To be working for the CIA, his alias was Jason Bourne.
He's a perfect liar.
The 2020 event.
Did you murder Shelley Boat? I'm sorry.
Could an innocent man be on death row? On the word of The Perfect Liar. Friday night on ABC.
COVID-19 was just a wake-up. There are so many more pandemics that could be just around the corner.
Virus Hunters special event Sunday, November 1st at 9 on National Geographic. Tuesday.
I expected way more from the oldest bachelor.
Sick! Stage is set.
You want to go be with Dale, you all go home.
For the biggest twist. Story.
Congratulations, you're just...
about what he's for. But my guess is he's kind of signaling that it's all going to be about personal attacks.
Joe Biden right there, bracing himself for attacks from the president tonight on his son, Hunter Biden. The president has been signaling that in the last several days. I want to bring in Dan Abrams, our chief legal analyst, for more on this. First of all, we know that the president's attempt to get Ukraine investigate Hunter Biden's business dealings was at the heart of impeachment. He's never really stopped trying to make it an issue. What do we know about what Hunter Biden did, whether his father had anything to do with it?
So we start in 2015, where Hunter Biden gets this position on the board of Burisma, this major Ukrainian energy company. And there were questions about whether he was qualified for it. There were even some within the Obama administration who were saying that it was an appearance of a conflict of interest. Fast forward just over a year later, Joe Biden then pressures the Ukrainian government to fire its top prosecutor. The question is why? President Trump and his allies say it was to protect Burisma and Hunter Biden from an investigation. Problem with that is that the State Department, the International Monetary Fund, the European Union, the U.S. government's position was the prosecutor's corrupt, and it's not that he's protecting Burisma, it's that he's not investigating Burisma and companies like it. Nevertheless, the administration is still saying there was wrongdoing.
Right, and this has been investigated also by the Senate Intelligence Committee and also a separate committee of the Senate led by Republicans.
Absolutely. And again, the same conclusion, right? The same people being cited who were saying that they were concerned about an appearance of a conflict of interest with Hunter Biden's role. And even Hunter Biden, at this point, has admitted that in retrospect, he probably shouldn't have taken that position. That's a very different question from, did Joe Biden do anything wrong? Was Joe Biden influenced in any way in what he did as vice president?
We do know Russian intelligence has tried to amplify this story, and that the White House was warned that they may be trying to influence the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. He's been pushing this story hard.
Right, which is why there is often skepticism when Rudy Giuliani has been the source of information, because the White House was specifically warned that the Russians were trying to target Rudy Giuliani for disinformation. But George, I don't think it's going to be Ukraine and Russia that we may hear about tonight. We also may hear about China Hunter Biden and Joe Biden from the president as well.
Right, and what we know about that is that Hunter Biden at one point did try to strike a business deal with China, take an equity stake in an investment fund, but now says that he never took any funds from that.
Right. And the question is going to be, does Joe Biden go on the offense here? Does he say to the president, well, what about your Chinese bank account? I've shown my tax returns. We haven't seen yours. Does Joe Biden go after Ivanka Trump for trademarks, lucrative ones that she got from the Chinese government, followed by the administration rescuing a major Chinese telecom company? So far, in the last debate, Joe Biden didn't go there. We're going to have to see if he goes there tonight.
Likely to be an issue tonight. Dan Abrams, thanks very much. We'll be right back.
Asthma symptoms can attack anywhere. Get fast relief here with Privatine Mist. FDA approved and available over the counter for mild asthma. It works quickly to restore free breathing. Privatine Mist. Breathe easy again.
The tailored comfort of Quilt Northern. When you return home to the comfort of your childhood bedroom, there's nothing else you'd rather see. No offense, Mr. Cuddles. Quilted Northern.
It's the final days of Ashley Home Store's lowest prices of the season sale. Shop queen beds starting at just $3.99 and living room essentials as low as $4.49. Or get 0% interest for 72 months. Ashley Home Store. This is home.
The ups and downs of frequent mood swings can take you to deep depressive lows. Or give you unusually high energy even when depressed. Overwhelmed by bipolar. About Fraylar. Some medicines only treat the lows or highs. Fraylar effectively treats depression, acute manic, and mixed episodes of bipolar 1 in adults. Full spectrum relief for all bipolar 1 symptoms with just one pill once a day. Elderly patients with dementia-related psychosis have an increased risk of death or stroke. Call your doctor about unusual changes in behavior or suicidal thoughts. Antidepressants can increase these in children and young adults. Report fever, stiff muscles, or confusion, which may mean a life-threatening reaction, or uncontrollable muscle movements, which may be permanent. Side effects may not appear for several weeks. High cholesterol or gain, high blood sugar, which lead to coma or death. Movement dysfunction, sleepiness, and stomach issues are common side effects. When bipolar 1 overwhelms, Vraylar the ups and downs.
The future of this great democracy is in your hands. What are you waiting for? Vote. Don't throw away your shot. Visit IamAvoter.com for all the information you need.
I'm a registered nurse who was a health minister for a local congregation. Today I'm retired and I deserve my Social Security. I followed the news, was furious when I read Joni Ernst exit. That's money I paid, and she wants Wall Street. If Joan Ernst is working for the Wall Street banks, she is not working for me.
SMP is responsible for the content of this ad. Day after day, top national security officials who've been in the Situation Room with President Trump have said he's not fit to be there, that he's unstable, unqualified, lacking character, and unable to make the important decisions necessary to keep us safe. Many of us chose to go fight for our country. Donald Trump is choosing to have the country fight itself. We can't stand for that.
FFPAC's responsible for the content of this ad.
Taking over $200,000 from the insurance industry? Don Bacon? Hell yes. Voting to end health insurance for over 100,000 Nebraskans? Don Bacon? Hell yes. And letting insurance companies charge what the AARP calls an age tax, costing older Americans up to 5 times more than others? Don Bacon? Hell yes. Nebraska needs a new representative. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising. Borat is back. And now tomorrow, Sacha Baron Cohen live on GMA with a surprise revelation about Borat. Something you haven't heard. What will he reveal now? Tomorrow, it happens live on ABC's Good Morning America.
That was the scene in the Senate Judiciary Committee today. The Democrats boycotted the final vote on Judge Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation for the Supreme Court. In their place, pictures of people who say will be affected by the ruling she makes. She was approved by the Republicans in the committee. Let's get more on that now from our legal team. I want to start out with Kate Shaw. And Kate, now that this confirmation process is moving so rapidly, likely to be approved next week by the full Senate. This is going to put more pressure on Joe Biden tonight to more fully flesh out what he intends to do on those questions of whether or not to expand the court.
Well, I think that's right, George. So Joe Biden has now said he is open to the idea of Supreme Court expansion. He has he has held off on full-throatedly supporting it, but he has said that he is open to the question. He'll convene a commission to study it and come back with a recommendation. So I think that's an important opening of the door to the possibility. And I think a lot will turn on what a Supreme Court with a Judge Amy Coney Barrett on it might do. So, the vacancy itself has become a major election issue. We could well see the Supreme Court itself become a major player in the election. Just this week, the Supreme Court decided two important voting cases. In one, Chief Justice Roberts joined the liberals to allow extended absentee voting in Pennsylvania. In the other, the Chief Justice joined the conservatives to shut down curbside voting in Alabama. So the court is really balanced on a knife's edge around some of these voting issues, and Amy Coney Barrett could prove decisive in some of these cases on the court. So I'll actually be watching very closely tonight to see what President Trump said about Judge Barrett, and in particular if he continues to claim getting her on the court is important in order to resolve dispute. She was non-committal in her confirmation hearing about the question of whether she would recuse in a case involved. But I think that every time the president seems to link her to potentially resolving the election, that strengthens the argument for her recusal in such a case.
Right, he makes that link even though he says he's never talked to her specifically about those issues. Terry, there's no question the Supreme Court has already been a huge player in this election.
Absolutely. As Kate just pointed out, the Supreme Court is helping to shape how voting will go forward in this election in Alabama, in Pennsylvania, in Texas as well. And there's a pattern that's emerging. In this pandemic, it is clear that state and local officials and state courts are, by and large, looking for ways to ease the availability of the franchise, the ability of people to go and vote or to mail in their ballots. And several times this year, conservatives on the Supreme Court have decided that reached into those state court, state law arrangements and said they don't meet what the conservatives believes are federal constitutional interests. And that is seen by many as a foretelling of what could happen after the election. Look, we've already had 300 COVID-related cases, lawsuits filed in 40 states. And it's not even the election day yet. Now, we always get a lot of litigation around an election, but this year is extraordinary. Some of these are going to end up in the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett is going to be there, and it's pretty clear that conservatives are looking to rein in what they feel are state courts, state legislatures, not in wildly liberal places, but in Alabama and Texas that are just trying to help people get to vote.
And Terry, only Amy Coney Barrett decides whether or not she's going to recuse. It's entirely up to her.
It is. That's the freedom of life tenure and the tradition on the Supreme Court. Lower court, there are some laws around other judges, how they recuse, but it will be up to her and her conscience. She was asked about it in confirmation hearings. It struck me that she was trying to communicate to the senators who were asking her that she would take a serious look when the case came, how it came, what the president has been saying. Of course, Democrats want her automatically to recuse herself. That's not likely. But it did sound as if she would take the matter seriously because so much is riding on the credibility of the court. If you were to have a role in the election after this confirmation, it would damage the court.
And Kate Shaw, of course, we all remember what happened in 2000, the Supreme Court stepping in to stop the counting of the votes in Florida. This year, you have the potential, at least, to have those kinds of disputes, not just in the state of Florida, but in several states.
That's right. If the vote is close in a lot of these key battleground states, you could well see the Supreme Court, resolving a Trump versus Biden or a Biden versus Trump 20 years after Bush versus Gore. I think that Chief Justice Roberts will do everything within his power to avoid the Supreme Court ending up in the middle of such a political dispute. I think that it was damaging to the court's reputation and institutional legitimacy for it to have been seen to resolve the 2000 election. But of course, it may not be up to Chief Justice Roberts. If the court's conservatives, with, say, a Justice Amy Coney Barrett, newly having joined the court, want to take up such a case and potentially resolve it, Chief Justice Roberts and his concern for institutional legitimacy may not be enough to stop them. So the only thing I think that would sort of foreclose that possibility is if the election is not at all close. But if it's close, there's a very real chance of one or more state disputes ending up before the Supreme Court.
Kate, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What's your gut tell you on what Justice Barrett, if indeed she is confirmed, will do on these election cases?
I think that she did seem open to recusing. I think that for her, she's a young person. She would be on this court for 30 years, probably maybe more. Her first major act on the Supreme Court to resolve, to cast the deciding vote to hand an election victory to the president who appointed her, I think would do real damage to her and her legacy on the court. And she strikes me as someone who cares about that sort of thing and about the court and its reputation. So I think that she would work very hard to avoid casting that vote. So that's my gut. But George, don't hold me to it.
Okay, I admit it. I put you on the spot. Thanks for answering the question. Less than 10 minutes to go into the debate. We'll be right back.
Tonight, I'll be eating cheesy cauliflower pizza with extra broccolini.
My turn. Tonight, I'll be eating cheesy cauliflower pizza and yummy broccolini.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is that my leotard?
No.
You can keep it.
Fast. With Alka-Seltzer Plus Severe Power Fast Fizz. Dissolves quickly, instantly ready to start working. So fast.
If you're at home thinking about your financial plan, so are we. Prudential helps 1 in 7 Americans with their financial needs. That's over 25 million people. With over 90 years of investment experience, our thousands of financial professionals can help with secure video chat or on the phone. We make it easy for you with online tools, e-signatures, and no medical exam life insurance. Plan for better days. Go to Prudential.com or talk to an advisor.
When pain wears you down, you need fast relief. And new ICI Dry Spray delivers. Feel it working instantly, providing powerful relief to muscles and joints. Icy the dawn, hot to relax. New ICI Dry Spray.
5G just got real. iPhone 12 and iPhone 12 Pro are here on Verizon 5G with the coverage of 5G nationwide and in more and more cities, the performance of 5G ultra wideband. Get iPhone 12 on us when you switch. Only on Verizon.
Trillions of costumes. Starting at $9.99. Mix it. Match it. You do you. Only at Party City.
I'm so ashamed to overpaid for this used car. I've decided to go undercover.
Remember, if you don't see me, you're not seeing the most accurate price. Shop at Carfax. You won't have to overpay on a used car again. Shop millions of great deals at the all-new Carfax.com.
Now Simparica Trio simplifies protection. Takes it, please. See ya.
Heartworm disease? No way.
Simparica Trio is the first oral that delivers all this protection. And Simparica Trio is demonstrated safe for puppies. It's simple. Go with Simparica Trio. This drug class has been associated with neurologic adverse reactions, including seizures. Use with caution in dogs with a history of these disorders. Protect him with all your heart. Simparica Trio.
Cody Hoyt speaking. This is the Montana Highway Patrol. You're looking for a couple of missing teenagers. The girls millennials aren't the first.
What do you mean?
We have the occasional young female vanish around here. Brace for impact.
Bethany Frankel, all new Ella.
That was a scene earlier today on the stage. You saw those plexiglass screens, which have now been removed. We're told it came after White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows made a request to Dr. Anthony Fauci to speak to the commission. He spoke to the commission and said that he did not believe the plexiglass screens were necessary because the candidates were 12 feet apart, so they will not be on the stage tonight. David Muir, what are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking to Joe Biden to see these personal attacks that he's signposted he knows are coming. The three of us have heard Joe Biden all this week say that. Will he engage, or will he turn to the camera, as Rahm Emanuel suggested earlier? Or, as Dan Abrams said, will he take an opportunity at some point in the debate to go after President Trump on the bank account in China about taxes? The other thing I'm looking for is which of the candidates best remembers how turned off the American people were by the first debate, the chaos, the interruptions, and remembers that for most people at home, it's how do we get through this pandemic, how do we recover this economy, and how do we do that without a significant loss of life as we move forward?
Lindsay Davis?
Yeah, similar to David, does he respond with the Michelle Obama mantra of when they go low, we go high? Additionally, of course, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Tens of millions of Americans have pre-existing conditions. The president has been promising his health care plan for years. Will we hear anything about it tonight?
Rahm Emanuel?
If I was Joe Biden, I'd make sure this campaign is one of compassion and cohesion versus continued conflict and chaos. And if you can keep it in that frame, which is therefore a referendum on Donald Trump, and you're the answer and the antidote to a more calmer future, that's where you want this.
So you expect him to be talking a lot more to the audience than to Donald Trump?
Totally about them, their future, act, and to just deflect Donald Trump. It's your children, your families, your future. That's what we're here to debate, not us.
Chris Christie, I hear that the White House aides have been showing President Trump videotapes of the last debate 4 years ago where they thought he did pretty well by at some point taking a lighter touch.
Yeah, that was debate number 3 that we were showing in George, and I would tell you that what I'm looking for tonight are 2 things. One, the president's demeanor. How does he come across, and does he understand that tonight could be a night to attempt to charm some of the American people by talking to them about what his vision is for the next 4 years? If he doesn't do that, then I think we're going to see another brawl like we saw a few weeks back.
And Yvette Simpson, that brawl did not help President Trump last time around.
Right. What I would say about Joe Biden, just to bring it home, is hopefully he took notes from Kamala Harris's handling of Pence. Be clear, be concise, shake your head and say bless your heart and keep it moving, because the reality is the guy on the other side of the stage is not in a position of winning. So ignore him, talk to the American people, be empathetic, and mostly be clear and be strong. That's what people want to see right now.
Sarah Fagan.
I want to see if Donald Trump can put Joe Biden on his heels about what is really the leftward lurch of the Democratic Party. Can he convince enough independents and soft Republicans that the choice is stark, get them to vote for him, and close this race? That's what I want to see.
Is that at odds with going after Hunter Biden?
It depends how he does it. Look, I think this is becoming a very legitimate issue, and there's been enough evidence that at least it deserves more debate. He can do that in a respectful way. If he interrupts, if he attacks, if he makes personal attacks on Hunter Biden's challenges with addiction, I think that's too low, and that will turn too many people off.
Cecilia Vega, what are you looking for?
Looking to see if the president can listen to his campaign aides who want him to just let Biden talk, in the hopes that Biden will perhaps dig his own ditch on that stage on some of these issues that they've been challenging him. And also, can the president articulate his vision clearly for a second term, because he has repeatedly so far failed to do that, George?
Martha Raddatz, you've been up as a moderator on a debate stage, on the national stage in a general presidential election. We talked about earlier in this program how President Trump has been going after Kristen Welker. You've been on the receiving end of that as well. What do you expect tonight?
I certainly have been on the receiving end of that. I think Kristen Welker can take whatever comes at her, but I think the real thing to remember is Donald Trump thought he did a fabulous job in that train wreck of a debate, so it doesn't matter what aides say, it doesn't matter what all of us say. We'll see if he really believes that, or he changes it up.
Matthew Dowd?
I'm really looking at Donald Trump in this because Joe Biden just has to stay steady and keep doing what he's doing. The question for me is, can Donald Trump be something different than he's been for 5 years? Can he get out of the bubble of everybody telling him the same thing over and over? And can he understand there's a whole group of voters out there that don't agree with him a lot and don't like him? And can he appeal to them in a fundamentally different way than he's done for 5 years? Because that's what he has to do.
That is a big question. Terry Moran, you get the last word.
And just to follow up on that, bring us together. That's what voters wanted in 1968, another tumultuous year. That was Richard Nixon's sense of the electorate. Does Donald Trump sense that? That people are tired, exhausted of the fighting and the hatred? Can he do it?
The debate is coming right up. We'll be right back.
This is an ABC News special. An election year like no other, with record-shattering voter turnout.
A vote for Republicans is a vote for safe communities, great jobs, and a limitless future for all Americans.
We choose hope over fear. We choose unity over division. Science over fiction. Yes, we choose truth over lies. It's time to stand up and take back our democracy.
The final presidential debate starts right now, live from Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee, and ABC News election headquarters. Now reporting, Chief Anchor George Stephanopoulos.
And welcome back to our special coverage of tonight's final presidential debate, just moments away now, and that is the scene at Belmont University in Nashville, where President Trump and Vice President Biden will take the stage for 90 minutes and take questions from moderator Kristen Welker of NBC News. Just 12 days to go in this election, almost 50 million Americans have already voted, a sign of the times, in a presidential race transformed by the pandemic and a sign of how engaged Americans are in this race. Also, for President Trump, he's behind in the national polls right now and the key battleground states. The pool of undecided voters is shrinking by the day. He's got to do something tonight to shake up this race. White House correspondent John Carl is on the scene in Nashville.
And George, when the president is behind, he goes on back. I expect that is what will happen here. I think he will go after in personal ways, going after his son Hunt dealings, lead him in that direction. I think he will do that. Now, George, the president complained bitterly about the fact that the microphone will be muted for some of the answers, for some of this. But his advisors actually think that that will be good for the president. What they really want to come out of this debate is for Joe Biden to make a mistake. And they believe that that is more likely to happen if the president isn't constantly interrupting him.
Right, they want to let Joe Biden talk and see what happens if that happens. Mary Bruce, what is the Biden team prepared for?
Well, Joe Biden's goal here tonight really is just to stay the course. He needs to avoid any big missteps. He needs to avoid giving the president any big openings here. He knows that Donald Trump is going to come after him with personal attacks against him and his family. They're braced for the fact that this debate could get ugly. And Joe Biden is going to push back against personal attacks, but he really doesn't want to get into the mud with the president. That is easier said than done. But instead, Joe Biden's goal here is really to stay laser focused on the president's handling of this pandemic and to try and talk just directly to the American people. So when Trump comes after him, Biden is going to argue this isn't about his family, this is about your family and what voters are looking for in their next president.
But Mary, Biden has admitted he lost his temper a little more than he wanted to at the last debate.
And George, I have to tell you, I have talked to Biden supporters who are not happy with the tone that they heard from the former vice president. He was very blunt, often very harsh. At one point, he even told the president of the United States to shut up. I think it will be interesting tonight to see whether he softens his tone at all against the president.
Okay, the debate is about to begin. As we said, the moderator will be Kristen Welker of NBC News. 6 big topics on the agenda tonight: fighting COVID, race, national security, climate change, and presidential leadership. Let's go to Kristen Welker.
Good evening from Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Kristen Welker of NBC News, and I welcome you to the final 2020 presidential debate between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. Tonight's debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. It is conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Commission's health security advisor. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, boos, or other interruptions, except right now, as we welcome to the stage former Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald J. Trump. And I do want to say a very good evening to both of you. This debate will cover 6 major topics. At the beginning of each section, each candidate will have 2 minutes uninterrupted to answer my first question. The debate commission will then turn on their microphone only when it is their turn to answer, and the commission will turn it off exactly when the 2 minutes have expired. Both microphones will remain on, but on behalf of the voters, I'm going to ask you to please speak one at a time. The goal is for you to hear each other and for the American people have to say. And so with that, if you're ready, let's start. And we will begin with the fight against the coronavirus. President Trump, the first question is for you. The country is heading into a dangerous new phase. More than 40,000 Americans are in the hospital tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage, 16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone. We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital, I had it, and I got better, and I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators. We're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility in this way, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, President's own advice, under 1,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president and still has a plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think, within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very quickly.
Can you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well. And we have others. And then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you because this is new and your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated, and then they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline?
I think the timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up, one in particular that's the head of logistics, and this is very easy distribution for him as soon as we have the vaccine. And we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter, and he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no plan.
We don't have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe. But China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have, moved quicker. But he didn't move quicker. He was months behind me, many months behind me. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal, but it was a total disaster. Had that had this kind of numbers, 700,000 people would be dead right now. But it is a far less lethal disease. Look, the one person who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic, it was horrible, we didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up the way every single move that he said we should make, that's what we've done. We've done all of it. But he was way behind us.
But not be. And he did it late after 40 countries had already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the president say in January? He said, no, he said, he's being transparent. The president being transparent. Thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act to make sure we can get whatever is needed out there to go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about work. This is all, don't worry. It's all going to be over soon. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump, your reaction?
Say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money to let this, but he has to do that. I didn't do that. I'd love to put myself face toward the White House, wait for a year and a half until it did. Can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including all-star families and military. Every meeting I had, and I had to meet, so, this day, and I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals, and now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And the CDC has said young people can get with COVID-19 and can pass it. President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though.
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please, and then I have a question.
Number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're living with it. The last time, is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? Say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your team.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault. But it's not Joe's fault that it came here either. It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry. The warm weather. Don't worry. Maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that. A lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said, this is a terrible thing, you're xenophobic. I think he called me racist even. And because I was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You certainly did.
I talked about a xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your different strategies to handle
He thought I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well,
that's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President?
No.
Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap in his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Oh, well, no, I'm not shutting down the net, but there are, look, they need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. For example, schools. Schools, they need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with smaller classes, more teachers, more and he's refused to support that money, or at least up to now.
Let's talk about schools. President Trump,
I think we have to respond, if I might.
Please, and then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight, and they're dying. They're dying. And he supports all these people. All he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country with a massive economy. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our country. You know, I've said it often. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. And that's what's happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Simply not true. We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open, but they need resources to open. You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that we're going to make sure that we open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. Come on.
President Trump, let me follow up with you quickly.
By the way, I will say this. If you go and look at what's happened to New York, it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. And when you talk about plexiglass, these are restaurants that are dying. These are businesses with no money. Putting up plexiglass is unbelievably expensive, and it's not the answer. I mean, you're going to sit there in a cubicle wrapped around with plastic. These are businesses that are dying, Joe. You can't do that to people. Just can't. City for so many years, I loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
Take a look at what New York has done in terms of turning the curve down in terms of the number of people dying. And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. West, are the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need, that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer, and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
about... When you say spike, take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes, and they've been closed. And they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems. And we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world by far. That's why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up with you before we move on to our next section. President Trump, this week you called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's best-known infectious disease expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony, but he did say, don't wear masks. He did say, as you know, this is not going to be a problem. I think he said, that's okay. He said, this is not going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. When Joe says that, I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, I'm knocking him a lot. Nobody knew. Look, nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We've learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now, wear a mask. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, use his exact words, this is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
My response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the American people. He told this was a serious virus that spread in the air, and it was much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us. He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us, Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we find out in the New York Times the other day that, in fact, his folks went to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous thing. And a memo out of that meeting, not from his administration, but from some of the brokers, said sell short because we got to get moving. It's a dangerous problem.
Well, this is
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we're going to move on.
I don't know. Somebody went to Wall Street. You're the one that takes all the money from Wall Street. I don't take it. You have raised a lot of money, tremendous amounts of money. And every time you raise money, deals are made, Joe. I could raise so much more money as president and as somebody that knows most of those people. I could call the heads of Wall Street, the heads of every company in America. I would blow away every record, but I don't want to do that because it puts me in a bad position. And then you bring up Wall Street. You shouldn't be bringing up Wall Street because you're the one that takes the money from Wall Street, not me. I could blow away your records that, like you wouldn't believe. We don't need money. We have plenty of money. In fact, we beat Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on.
Average contribution, $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section, which is national security. And I do want to start with the security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence officials confirmed again that both Russia and Iran are working to influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I ask everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election, that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the president said anything to Putin about it. I don't think he's talking to him a lot. I don't think he said a word. I don't know why he hadn't said a word to Putin about it. And I don't know what the Iranians. My guess is he'd probably be more outspoken with regard to the Iranians. The point is this, folks. We are in a situation where we have foreign of our election. His own national security advisor told him that, but it's happening with his buddy, I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani. Pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that everything is going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, when he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question, why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 questions in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes.
Well, let me respond to the first part as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife, and you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million, and someday you're gonna have to explain why did you get 3.5. I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that, and through John Ratcliffe, who's fantastic, DNI, he said the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose, because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra $130 billion, going to $420 billion a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine. There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, they were so bad. They took over the submarine port. You remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them, but you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family. But what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond to 30 seconds. And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 8 times in China, secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is about me taking money. I've not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years, go look at them, 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants, underwrote it. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying $750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid. Because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your account
Nobody told you that. Excuse me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia. You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know, maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some questions about all of this, but I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you have a deadline for when you're going to release them?
I get treated worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because I have a lot of people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about questions regarding your potential foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance to talk about this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years you're going to release. Nobody knows, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on, folks.
So,
President Trump, and then I want to get to the questions to both of you.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. 48 million. I guarantee you, if I spend 1 million on you, Joe, I could find plenty wrong. Because the kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken, I mean, your brother made money in Iraq. Millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune. And it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it. And you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China. Company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing, number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had it. The only guy I made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
President Trump, let me ask my question to you.
But could I just one thing? His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best, not. Here they paid $183,000 a month. Listen to this. 183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy.
I'm going to let the Vice President respond to that quickly, and then I need to get to a question to you.
No basis for that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump, this is for you. Since you took office, you've never divested from your business. You've personally promoted your property abroad. A report this week, which was referenced, does indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is everybody knows about it, it's listed. The bank account was in 2013. That's what it was. It was opened it was closed in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was going to forget about doing a deal in China like millions of other. to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I was like him, where he's the president and he does business. I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it before I even ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking.
Okay, well, President Trump, thank you. We do
supporting here
about China more broadly. There have, of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully transparent in regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make China pay? And please be specific, what would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules, not like he has done. He has caused the deficit of China to go up, not down, with China, up, not down. We are making sure that in order to do business in China, you have to give all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends, all of our allies. We make up we're 25% of the world's economy. We need to be having the rest of our friends with us saying to China, these are the rules. You play by them or you're going to pay the price for not paying by them economically. That's the way I will run it, and that's what we did in upholding steel tariffs and a range of other things when we were president and vice president.
All right, let's talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, I have to respond to that.
Okay, very quickly, and then we're going to move on to North Korea.
$1.5 billion from China to manage after spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two, number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy, though, what specifically are you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You said you're going to pay.
China is paying. They're paying billions and billions of dollars. I just gave $28 billion.
New sanctions?
I just gave $28 billion to our farmers.
Taxpayers' money.
It's what?
Taxpayers' money. Didn't come from China.
You know who the taxpayer is? It's called China. China paid $28 billion, and you know what they did to pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid out. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25% on dumped steel because they were killing our steel industry. We were not going to have a steel industry.
Okay.
And now we have a steel industry.
Vice President Biden, your response, please.
My response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making less than, if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making. And the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont, they're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want to talk about North Korea. I do want to turn to 10 seconds, Mr. President. 10 seconds.
Typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing, and then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about
I'm not
North
a typical
Korea.
politician.
Okay.
That's why I got elected. Let's get off the subject of China. Let's talk around, sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk about North Korea now. President Trump, you've met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times. You've talked about your beautiful letters with him. You've touted the fact that there hasn't been a war or a long-range missile test. North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next
So
one.
when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House, right at the beginning, had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? It would be a nuclear war, and he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And you know, about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, you know, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul, millions of people would be dead right now.
President
We
Trump,
don't have
that's
a war,
30
and I have a
seconds.
good
Thank
relationship.
you. Vice President Biden, to you, North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat rate?
Because I make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's the rig. I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up. He's going to continue. What is he doing? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off. And they have much more capable missiles, able to reach U.S. territory much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you, Vice President Biden. You said you wouldn't meet with Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Are there any conditions under which you would meet with him?
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get the Korean Peninsula should be a nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to American families.
They tried
Very
to
quickly,
meet with
10
him.
seconds,
They
President.
tried to meet with him. He wouldn't do it. He didn't like Obama. He didn't like him. He wouldn't do it.
Okay,
I know
gotta
for a
give him a
fact they
chance to
tried.
respond to that
He
before we
wouldn't
move
do
on.
it. And it's okay. You know what, North Korea, we're not in a war. We have a good relationship. You know, people don't understand. Having a good
President
relationship
Trump,
with
we have to
leaders
move
of other
on, because
countries
we
is a good
we
thing.
have a lot of questions to get to.
Not
Your
to
response.
And we had a good relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded Europe, the rest of Europe. Come on. The reason he would not meet with President Obama is because President Obama said, we're going to talk about denuclearization. We're not going to legitimize you, and we're going to continue to put stronger and stronger sanctions on you. That's why he wouldn't meet with us.
All right,
And
let's
it didn't
move
happen.
on. Let's move on and talk about
He left
American
me a
families.
mess, Kristen.
President Trump, okay, we do
They
need to move
left
on.
me a mess. North Korea was a mess.
We
And
need
in
to
fact,
move
if
on
you
so that
remember
we
the
can get
first
to
2
all
or
of our
3 months,
questions tonight.
there was a very
President Trump.
dangerous period in my first 3 months before we sort of worked things out a little bit.
Okay.
There was a very they left us a mess, and Obama would be he thought that our country.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is health care, as you both know. Today there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and health care is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn it. If the Supreme Court does overturn that law, those 20 million Americans could lose their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away and you have 2 minutes uninterrupted?
Sure. First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible. Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision. Run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route and made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premium. How well you run it, it's no good. What I'd like to do is terminate it. We have the individual mandate done. I don't know that it's going to work. If we don't, well, I'll have to run it, and we'll have Obamacare, but it'll be better run. But it no longer is Obamacare, because without the individual mandate, it's much different. Pre-existing conditions will always stay. What I would like to do is a much better health care, much better, will always protect people with existing. So I'd like to terminate Obamacare, come up with a brand new, beautiful health care. The Democrats will do it because there'll be tremendous pressure on them, and we might even have the House by that time. And I think we're going to win the House, okay? You'll see, but I think we're going to win the House. But come up with a better health care, always protecting people with pre-existing conditions. And one thing very important, we have 180 million people out there that have great private health care, far more than we're talking about with Obamacare. Joe Biden is going to terminate all of those policies. These are people that love their health care, people that have been successful, middle-income people, been successful. They have 180 million plans, 180 million people, families. Under what he wants to do, which will basically be socialized medicine, he won't even have a choice, wanted to terminate 180 million plans. And we're going to do even better.
Okay, Vice President Biden. Healthcare plan calls for building on Obamacare. So my question is, what is your plan if the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
What I'm going to do is pass Obama. Become Biden care. The public option is an option that says that if you in fact do not have the wherewithal to be, if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now by allowing the Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies. Thirdly, the idea that I want to eliminate private insurance, the reason why I had such a fight with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why I did. Not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare. They did not lose their insurance unless they chose they wanted to go to something else. Lastly, we're going to make sure we're in a situation that we actually protect pre-existing. There's no way he can protect pre-existing conditions. None. Zero. You can't do it in the ether. He's been talking about this for a long time. He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting for since 17, 18, 19, and 20. The fact that I still have a few more minutes. I know you're getting anxious. The fact is that he's already cost the American people, because of his terrible handling of the COVID virus and the economic spillover, 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare, and over 110 million people with pre-existing conditions. And all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President Trump said. He's accusing you of wanting socialized medicine. What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance, to a health care system run by the government?
It's ridiculous. It's like saying that, the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a social. Look, the difference between the president, I think health care is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable health care. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions, as well as a whole range of other people who in fact are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives, and this is going to give some people an opportunity to have health care for their children. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick? Because you've lost your home insurance, your health insurance, your company's gone under. We have to provide health insurance for people at an affordable rate, and that's what I do.
President Trump,
he was there for 47 years. He didn't do it. He was now there as vice president for 8 years, and it's not like it was 25 years ago. It was 3 3/4. It was just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine, and it's not that he wants it. His vice president, I mean, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it. You're going to have socialized medicine, just like you went with fracking. We're not going to have fracking. We're going to stop fracking. We're going to stop fracking. Then he goes to Pennsylvania after he gets a nomination, where he got very lucky to get it. And he goes to Pennsylvania, And he says, oh, we're going to have fracking. And you never ask that question. And by the way, so far, I respect very much the way you're handling this. I have to say. But somebody should ask the question. He goes for a year. There won't be
We have a number of topics.
No, but that's a big question.
We're going to get to it.
It's the same thing with socialized
I have to
medicine.
respond.
Vice President, your response, please.
My response is people deserve to have affordable health care, period. Period, period, period. And the Biden care proposal will, in fact, provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And they're going to have lower premiums. You can buy the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your premiums, deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anybody on health care. Not a thing.
Kristen, when he
Very quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening.
he's talking about and healthcare. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally destroying your Social Security, and this whole country will come down. You know, Bernie Sanders tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal governor. They want to make it work.
Okay, let's let Vice President Biden respond.
It doesn't work.
He's a very confused guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden. I beat all those other people because I disagreed with them. Joe Biden he's running against. And the idea that we're in a situation that they're going to destroy Medicare, this is the guy that the actuary of Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So I mean, the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare? Come on.
He tried to get rid of he tried to hurt Social Security years ago. Years ago. Go back and look at the records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All right, let's move on.
This is the guy that when they announced...
Mr. President, I have to move on to the next question.
They said the stock market will boom if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay, let's move on to the next question very quickly.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. I come from a Scranton, Claymont, that people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more. $700 billion more. Because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to move on.
401ks are through the roof.
We're going to move on.
Are through the roof. And he doesn't come from Scranton. That's like he lived there for a short period of time before he even knew it.
We're going to move on to the next question.
And the people of Pennsylvania
Let me move on to my next question, gentlemen. As of tonight, more than 12 million people are out of work. And as of tonight, 8 million more Americans have fallen into poverty. And more families are going hungry every day. Those hit hardest are women and people of color. They see Washington fighting over a relief bill. Mr. President, why haven't you been able to get them the help they need? 30 seconds here.
Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve it. I do.
But you're the president.
I do, but I still have to get. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it. We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President.
You know, the Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
Let me follow up with you, Vice President.
We made it
Biden, because let me ask Vice President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets, and states that have to balance their budgets, and then have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they can keep their cities and counties running. He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go bankrupt. Let them go bankrupt. Come on. What's the matter with
The bill that was passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars to these kids. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally. We were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does, and I'd love to into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right,
If I get elected, I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'm going to be an American president. I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, because teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time to ask them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum wage.
I do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out, too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help. But these guys will not help them. It's not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to immigration,
One thing very
but I
quickly,
want
he
to
said we have to help our small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different from Vermont. Every state is different. It should be a state option.
You said very recently.
It's very important. We have to help our small businesses. How are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said that recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Is that still the case?
And I would consider it to an extent, but
in a
what I
second
really
administration?
in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would be
President Trump, thank you. Quick response, Vice President Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when you raise the minimum wage, businesses go out of business. That is simply not true.
We're going to talk about immigration. We're going to talk about immigration now, gentlemen. And we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero-tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through
But
America.
how will you reunite these kids with their families, Mr. President?
They built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, And it was a picture of these horrible cages, and they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them, and then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Bay, real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up
Kristen,
question.
they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
they
to that?
We changed. They built the cages. Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about
who built the cages,
Let's talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask you
I will
about
say
it.
this. They went down, we
seconds,
brought
and then I need to
reporters, everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some of them
They've gotten
haven't been
such good-
reunited
But
with
just
their
ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
Because we made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is, I've made it very clear. Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy and they want to do that is they're going to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River and it's illegal. And you say, oh no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
Kristen, he had 8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed without having a specific, we got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years, he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If in fact you had a family came across and they were arrested, they in fact were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released, and guess what? They showed up for a hearing. This is the first president in the history of the United States of America that's seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that you seek asylum based on the following premise: why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
So
30
important.
seconds, and then we'll move
It
on.
just shows that he has no understanding of immigration of the laws. Catch and release is a disaster. A murderer would come in, a rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe. They never come back. Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay, President
Very,
Trump, let's
very
give
few.
Vice President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the
You
next
don't know the
section.
law, Joe.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Know the law, what he's telling you is simply not true.
Well, check it out. They don't come back.
Check it out.
All right, let's move on.
But we don't have to worry about it because I terminated it, so we don't have to worry about it
Let's
anymore.
move on to the next
And you have
section.
525 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
Good.
All right, let's talk about our next section, which is race in America. And I want to talk about the way Black and brown Americans experience race in this country. Part of that experience is something called the talk. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin. Mr. Vice President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has a graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts, for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a Black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child, when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street. Making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, just yes sir, no sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are, in fact, the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is, there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. But guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it. But we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things, just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the Black community. And they were called, and he called them super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators. And they kept never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done more for the Black. If you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done. Criminal justice reform, Obama and Joe didn't do it. I don't even think they tried because they had no chance at doing it. They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture, and everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People being the biggest beneficiary, the Black and Hispanic communities, and then historically Black colleges and universities. After 3 years of coming to the office, I love some of those guys. They were great. They came into the office and they said, I said, what are you doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? Because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year. We have to come back. Because President Obama would never give them long-term funding. And I did. 10-year long-term funding, and I gave them more money than they asked for because they said, I think you need more. And I said, the only bad part about this is I may never see you again because I got very friendly with them. And they like me and I like them. But I saved it. Colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that, Vice Chair.
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is a guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this. But you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, your response to that, and then I do have some questions for both of you.
I'll tell you what, I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am. You know who he is. You know his character. You know my character. You know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some follow-up. Please respond, and then we're going to have follow-up.
If this stuff is true about Russia, Ukraine, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician. Right. So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Hey, President Trump, I want to stay on the issue of race. We're talking about the issue
from hell.
President Trump, we're talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
I have to respond to that.
Please,
because look,
very quick.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
That's exactly what.
Is this where you're going? This is where he's going. The laptop is Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You have to be kidding. Here we go again with Russia.
We're going to continue on the issue of race. Mr. President, you've described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. I mean, they can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark, but I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice President Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire. Every single one. He started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's getting rid of those Mexican rapists. He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says about the poor boys, last time we were on stage here, he said, I told them to stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy is a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a follow-up.
No, you made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
you said you're Abraham Lincoln.
No, where did that? No. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
And I'm saying,
I didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said not since anybody done what I've done for the black community. Now, thing other than the crime bill, which put tens of thousands of black men mostly in jail.
All right, let me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it because
President
if you
Biden
look at what's happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
we treated them very differently. Just take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, their fathers, their uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
one of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change the sense, and particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money on. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done, because I think the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to drug. But they were not in the crime bill.
But why didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action.
We got a lot of it done. We released 38,000 prisoners left from the...
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running, to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I just asked one question. Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Here's with Obama. You know why, Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress. That's the answer.
Well, you got to talk them into it, Joe.
All right.
You got to talk them into it.
We're going to move on to our next section.
Like I did with criminal justice reform. I had to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen, we're running out of time, so we got to get on to climate change, please. You both have very different visions on climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes with all the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it. And we have the best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years under this administration. We are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
And we
Biden.
haven't destroyed our industries.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you, uninterrupted.
Climate change, climate warming, global warming is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world, we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to clean up, to limit the limit of emissions will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs, and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And what right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, you're
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan, that his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan, his environmental plan, you know who developed it? AOC plus 3. They know nothing about the climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate, and they're all hopping through hoops for AOC plus 3. Look, their real plan cost $100 trillion. If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to take buildings down because they want to make bigger windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing. This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen. And this wasn't done by smart people. This wasn't done by anybody. Frankly, I don't even know how it can be good politically. They want to spend $100 trillion. That's their real number. He's trying to say it was 6. It's $100 trillion. They want to knock down buildings and build new buildings with little, tiny, small windows. I mean, and many other things.
Okay.
And many other things.
Let me have the Vice President respond, and we're running out of time, and we have a lot more questions to get to. So let's hear from the Vice President. I have a number more questions.
I don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Wait.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan was, and this is plan endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group. Labor. Because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America is the electric, solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, 45, 50 bucks an hour. We can grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
President Trump,
Excuse me.
please
We are
respond, and then I have some
We are
follow-up.
energy independent for the first time. We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive, kills all the birds, it's very intermittent, it's got a lot of problems, and they happen to make the windmills in both Germany and China. And the fumes coming up, if you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
Find me a scientist
Solar.
that said that.
I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not powerful in it yet to really run our big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So it's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry. You want. And what about fracking?
All right,
Now we have to ask
let me
about
allow Vice President Biden to respond.
I never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is, he's flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer, we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money and doing it. It's a transition to that.
I have one more question in this pod.
Excuse me, he was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking or oil on federal land.
Let me ask this final question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they're making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater the percentage gain than it was under, in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic. We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again. And everybody has very inexpensive gasoline.
Vice President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that in fact pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is, and it's including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when her first frost, driving me to school, turning the windshield up, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do you do? And you put restrictions on the pollutions, the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final
Would he
question.
close
It
down
falls-
the oil industry?
It falls.
Or would you close
it
down the
falls-
oil
By the way, I
industry?
would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would
that's a big
transition.
statement.
It is a big statement,
That's a-
because I would stop,
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal, but
That's a
you can't
big
do that.
statement.
Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time, and I'd stop giving to the oil industry. I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. You won't give federal subsidies to the gas, excuse me, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do.
All right.
Solar and wind.
We have
That's
one
maybe
final
the biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he's
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context, but the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he gonna
final
get
question.
China to do it?
No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We
going
have
to
to
get
move on
China
to our
to do it?
final question. We
No,
have to
I'm
move
going
on
to
to our
rejoin
final
Paris
question.
Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All right, this is about leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make a country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it. We're doing good numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, etc. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not no people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success. But I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. Racism, and at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country. Decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. Most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 3rd. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
There you have it, second and final debate of this 2020 election. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, two white men in their 70s, two very different candidates. What we've heard tonight, over the course of the 9 minutes, as we see Melania Trump come on the stage wearing her mask tonight, is two very different visions of how to handle the COVID crisis, how the COVID crisis was handled. For the first 40 minutes or so, it seemed like a relatively normal debate. As the candidates laid out their positions on the COVID crisis, got heated about 40 minutes in when Joe Biden unexpectedly went on offense over Donald Trump and his personal personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. President Trump responding with a series of unverified and misleading and false charges about Joe Biden and his business dealings and the business dealings of his son. And then some harsh clashes. We didn't have the kind of interruptions we saw in the first debate. The mic mute did appear to work at least for a time, but there were harsh clashes on health care, the minimum wage, children separated at the border under the Trump administration policy, and the big issue of character and race. Joe Biden memorably saying sarcastic Abraham Lincoln, talking about Donald Trump as one of the most racist presidents of modern times. The big question, John Carl, in the debate hall tonight for the president and his team, did they do enough to change the dynamic of this race?
Well, look, George, this was a much better debate, and kudos to Kristen Welker in the moderating here. And certainly the Trump camp Republicans generally, who I've heard from over the course of the debate, were relieved that Donald Trump was much more disciplined. He wasn't doing all the interruptions. He actually had a theme at times. The theme that Joe Biden is a politician. When Biden would come up with something, why didn't you do it when you were in power? 47 years, why didn't you do it? So much more disciplined Donald Trump. But George, your question, did it do enough to change the race? I don't think so. And one factor here is that Joe Biden had, I believe, the best debate that he has had in 2020. Joe Biden went on the offense. Joe Biden had Donald Trump on the defensive repeatedly. Even when it got into Hunter Biden, Joe Biden turned it around and put Donald Trump on the defensive about his taxes. I've released my taxes. Why haven't you released your taxes? How much did you pay in taxes? What about your bank account in China? It was a much feistier and more focused Joe Biden as well.
Mary Bruce, the Biden camp had made this debate a priority. They put him down for several days to prep. Perhaps it paid off.
It certainly seems that way. And you know, George, going into this debate, we were talking about how in many ways Joe Biden just needed to stay the course. This was anything but trying to run out the clock here tonight. Joe Biden was surprisingly aggressive. It was, I think I agree with John Carl, his strongest debate performance, much stronger certainly than the face-offs that we saw him have during the primary. And he did go on offense. He went after Trump really hard on his taxes, on his lack of a health care plan, on foreign influence, on immigration and child separation policies. And his team tonight feels that he did a very strong job here. They say, you know, yes, the president may have had a softer tone, that there weren't the constant interruptions that we saw at the last debate. But Biden's team says, look, that simply doesn't cut it. That they say Trump needed a win here, he needed a big win here, and he didn't do that. That's according to the Biden team. They also feel, you know, that Trump came in trying to drive specific attacks. They say that he repeated lies, and that Biden proved that he can flip the script on the president and put him on defense.
David Muir, he was not sitting on a lead.
No, it wasn't. And right out of the gate, we saw that very difference between the two of them on how they would handle the pandemic. You know, we saw the vice president come out with the black mask on. The president did not have a mask. They differed on where we've been as a country in the pandemic, where we are, and where we're going. The president talked about him having COVID. He said, I'm immune. Said, not sure how long that lasts, but I'm immune. So the vaccine was ready. It'll be distributed quickly, although we know regulators have said emergency authorization won't come for a few more weeks, at least until around Thanksgiving. From Vice President Biden, we heard something very different. He said 220,000 Americans are dead. Any president who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain president of the United States. He used the word responsible, which is a strong word for Vice President Biden to use. He said we're about to go through a very dark winter, in stark contrast to what we've heard from Donald Trump, not only in the campaign trail this week, but he said it again tonight during the debate that we are rounding the corner, despite the surge the three of us have been reporting on in this country. And it's really, no part of this country is immune to the spike that we're seeing right now. And where they really did battle is how do you move forward? Vice President Joe Biden made the argument that we've got to get money to small business. We've got to open carefully. It might mean social distancing within these businesses. The president continued to try to hammer him, saying, you've got to open things up. We are stifling the economy here in this country. But it was very stark, the difference on every single point when it comes to the pandemic.
Definitely on the pandemic. And Lindsay, one of the other things I think we saw the president trying to make headway with these attacks against Joe Biden, his personal corruption. He said it seemed like Joe Biden came back and sort of embraced that debate, saying character is on the ballot.
Right, and looked right at the American public at that moment and said, you know who we are, right? And now you make that decision. I thought that was a really strong and compelling moment that Joe Biden had. I think that he really had one job to do tonight, and that was do no harm, and I think that he accomplished that. Chris Christie said right off the top that Donald Trump's job was to say, what is he going to do in the next 4 years? Instead, he really gave what you're going to get if Joe Biden is to get elected. You're going to have a depression, the likes of which nobody has ever seen. The stock market is going to crash. Fracking will go away. You're going to have socialized medicine. Small businesses will have to fire employees, and went on and on and on.
Even when he was asked what he would be saying at his inauguration, which presumably would have been after he defeated Joe Biden. We're going to hear from Chris Christie and Rahm Emanuel. Got to take a quick break first.
I'm looking for my client. I'm his accountant.
I'm so sorry.
Hey, man! You're here! You don't trust me here in Vegas, do you? Well, I thought we had a breakthrough with the Volkswagen. We did? Yes. We broke through. That's the Volkswagen? That's the cross sport. Wow. Seatbelts. Please just tell me where we're going.
My blood pressure is borderline. New Garlic Healthy Blood Pressure formula helps maintain healthy blood pressure with a custom blend of ingredients. I'm taking charge with Garlic.
And maintain healthy cholesterol safely and naturally with Garlic Healthy Cholesterol formula.
Hey, good morning.
A live bookkeeper is helping customize QuickBooks for me.
Okay, you're all set up.
Thanks. That was my business key. This one's casual.
Get set up right with a live bookkeeper with Intuit QuickBooks.
At T-Mobile, we believe you should get more. That's why we merged with Sprint. Now, it's about to get even better. And as we work to integrate Sprint's network, our nationwide 5G keeps getting stronger, with the capacity and coverage to reach more people and places across the country. Who says you can't have it all? Now is the time for 5G. Now is the time to join T-Mobile.
Drive-through flu shots are now at Hy-Vee. Your Hy-Vee pharmacy now has a drive-through flu shot clinic, so you don't even have to leave your car to get your flu shot. It's fast and convenient, and there's no appointment necessary. Check with your local store for flu shot clinic hours. And you can still get your flu shot safely inside the store anytime the pharmacy is open, with no appointment necessary. Get your flu shot, plus earn a 20-cent fuel saver, only at Hy-Vee. Some restrictions apply.
I was 24 and pregnant, at home with a 13-month-old, when I got a knock at the door. It was the priest. My husband, Rod, a union electrician, had been killed on the job. I'm Teresa Greenfield, and Social Security survivor benefits help save our family. So when I see Washington politicians take millions from Wall Street and then threaten to privatize and cut Social Security, I say no way. I approve this message because for me, it's personal.
On game day, the KETV sports team and our team of Husker experts have your final look at the Big Red and their opponents before kickoff. Big Red Zone Saturday, starting at 8:30 a.m.
PyramidGroup.com, never settle for less.
And we are back after the final debate. Let's go to our roundtable of analysts. Chris Christie, let me begin with you. Same question I asked John Carl. Did President Trump do what he needed to do?
I think he did, George. In terms of his demeanor tonight, I think he ran a debate that was very strong. His demeanor was good. I think he was talking to the American people. And I think the other thing that I knew he needed to do tonight, which I think he did, was to show the contrast between the policies of his administration and what would be a Biden administration. So for people out there who are listening who want to know what the choice is, I think they got a much better opportunity to hear that choice tonight. I think it was a good night for the president. I think he did what he needed to do tonight and what's possible to do in a 90-minute debate. I think the president did quite well tonight.
Rahm Emanuel?
I think Joe Biden was most passionate about the concerns and the squeeze on middle-class families who are sitting at the kitchen table trying to figure out how to pay bills, health care costs, college costs, mortgage payment. And that passion of understanding that intensity of pressure on families in a very intimate and personal way really came through. And you can also understand, he said, let's have a character debate, and that's what's on the ballot. And I think he understood that I'm going to be a president for all America. Now, I would say Trump, for about 40 minutes, he played to the script, and then the mask came off, and the old Trump was there. And then I would also say that while the microphone was off, the camera was on, and when Joe Biden was speaking, Trump looked like a petulant child. And the whole time that split screen did not work for Donald Trump. And so the mic may have been down, but the camera was on, it was hot. And his facial gestures did not work for him. And at the end of the day, I also think this. The American people have made a decision about this election. It's about Donald Trump. It's a referendum there. The dynamics of that for the election, the architecture is set, clear, and they're going to go making a decision about Trump and whether Biden is an accepted alternative, and Biden cleared that bar.
Let's take that question to Sarah Fagan. Sarah Fagan, did President Trump make it a choice election tonight?
He did a much better job in this debate than the first one of making it a choice. And I agree with Chris. I think the president did well. But what the president needed tonight to ultimately change the trajectory of this race was for Biden to make a big mistake. And I did not see that. I thought the vice president answered himself quite well. He was forward-leaning and at times addressed the American people directly, which I thought were strong moments. So I don't think this race changes much. Perhaps we'll see a slight tightening of the polls. And I think that will help Trump. I think as the narrative shifts, it's helpful as the race closes for him. But he didn't get it. He didn't get what he needed out of Biden tonight.
Yvette Simpson?
You know, I think Biden had his best night tonight. He continues to get better and better in these debates. And I think the fact that he actually had time to clarify, to be empathetic, to even acknowledge some of his mistakes, I think is going to speak to a lot of people who might be on the fence about him. I think the real challenge is the bar is so low for Trump that the fact that he didn't have a fit and rolled around on the floor means he had a good debate is ridiculous. I just want to call one thing out that I thought was really, really problematic. He said, I am the least racist person in this room with an African-American female moderator. I mean, how divorced from reality do you have to be able to say something like that in the midst of a debate? So I think Biden had his best night. I think he won overwhelmingly. I think Trump was better than last time, but I think he just sounds ridiculous to most people who are looking for a real leader right now, which most Americans are.
Yvette, thank you. Matthew Dowd, what changed?
Nothing changed. I mean, it's funny that we're saying that Donald Trump did better. I mean, last time we described him as a bull in a china shop, so he wasn't a bull in a china shop, but that doesn't mean he won the debate. I think when this is all said and done, Joe Biden won this debate because he raised his performance. Donald Trump raised his a bit. It wasn't as much of a food fight and free-for-all, and so that means that's to Joe Biden's benefit when he's going into this 10 points up with 50 million people have already voted. Donald Trump did nothing to lower Joe Biden's favorability, so this is a net win for Joe Biden.
Let's get some fact checks right now as well. I want to bring in Cecilia Vega. Cecilia, there's pretty impassioned debate over that whole family separation policy of the Trump administration. Those children who are now separated from their parents, over 500 children. One of the things we saw from President Trump trying to continue to push it back on the Obama administration and their immigration policy.
Yeah, that's been a go-to move on his front. But these 545 children, the reality is, are still today separated from their families, their parents, despite repeated efforts to locate their parents. And the reality is this is a direct result of what many believe to be that failed policy by the Trump administration to separate families at the border. This is nothing short of a travesty. That's the fact on that. These families cannot be relocated right now. The president was asked specifically, what is your plan to locate and reunite these families? He then started talking about the smugglers who he believes are bringing these children to the border. He said he will have a plan, but I don't know how you go about reuniting these families when for a long time they've been running ads in places like Mexico and Central America trying to locate relocate families in rural parts of the country to no success. And the issue right now, George, is that there are 32 million eligible Latinos to vote, a historic number, in this upcoming election. And it is an issue like this that could tilt the tables in favor of one candidate or the other in some swing states like Arizona and Florida.
See, Vega, thanks very much. Let's bring in Jen Abrams. Dan, we heard several charges from the president. I think for a lot of people, they wouldn't know what he was talking about when he was talking about Biden's personal corruption, a little bit about Hunter. Most of those charges unverified, several misleading or untrue.
Right, so you got the $1 billion plus from China, you got $3.5 million from Russia. The key question there is, what's the link to Joe Biden, right? You're talking about Hunter Biden's business in China. Yes, Hunter Biden was involved in a fund that raised a lot of money, that did invest in Chinese companies. Hunter Biden says he resigned from them, says he didn't make a penny. Regardless, evidence that Joe Biden also on Russia, that came from the Senate Intel report, right? This idea that $3.5 million came from the ex-wife of the mayor of Moscow, etc. Again, the sourcing on that is a little tricky because Hunter Biden's lawyers suggest they've confused one company with another and Hunter Biden wasn't actually involved in that company. Regardless, again, no evidence that Joe Biden was getting any of that. And again, because Joe Biden has released his tax returns, you can look and you can see whether he would have had any income coming from places like that. The one thing Joe Biden attacked President Trump on, the Chinese bank account. Of course, President Trump says he just opened it to explore opportunities there.
And the tax returns as well. Martha Raddatz, you were in Pennsylvania today. You talked with a lot of undecided voters. Think this changed any minds?
I don't think it did, George. And there's so few undecided voters. I talked to a lot of Trump supporters. I said, what is it about President Trump? They said they like his strength. They like it when he tells it like it is. Now, when he tells it like it is, it actually all the time isn't like it is. But I think those Trump voters saw the man they want, and those supporting Biden, and several of the Trump voters I spoke to from 2016 have flipped to Biden, and they said it's all about character. So they saw the man they wanted, George.
And they have already been voting in Pennsylvania for about a week or more. Going to take another quick break. We'll be right back.
I'm going to change.
COVID-19 cases are on the wrong start. Communities there turn to their own mask mandates. Coming up, the options on the table to slow the spread.
A hard freeze and snow in my 7-day at 10.
The lack of control over my business may be a little intense, but now QuickBooks helps me get paid, manage cash flow, and run payroll. And now I'm back on top with Koala Kai.
Save over 30 hours a month with Intuit QuickBooks.
I am an American citizen from Puerto Rico.
I'm 16 years old, permanent resident, green card holder. I can't vote. I cannot vote.
I cannot vote.
I vote for the people who have special needs, like my brother Tommy, who cannot vote.
Your woe affecting my life. I have a voice for pretty much everybody that doesn't have that voice.
You have an opportunity to do something. You should do something. For me.
For you.
For those who can't.
Vote.
America.
America.
America. This election season, there are a lot of issues worth debating. But please,
Don't drink and debate politics.
Don't drink and debate who won the debates.
don't drink and debate how we're going to vote this year. But please do vote.
Don't drink and bring up gerrymandering.
Jared. Who's Jared?
And if there's anything Smirnoff knows for sure.
Don't ever drink and bring up Russia. Just drink water instead. Smear it off. Drink responsibly, debate responsibly. nonpartisan facts behind the real stories at usafacts.org.
Asthma symptoms can attack anywhere. Get fast relief here with Privatine Mist. FDA approved and available over the counter for mild asthma. It works quickly to restore free breathing. Privatine Mist. Breathe easy again.
Tonight, Donald Trump still thinks he can ignore this virus and it will go away. And that strategy didn't work with Don Jr. and Eric, and it isn't going to work here.
With Octavia Spencer, the bad hair comedian Jay Farrow. Jimmy Kimmel Live, new tonight on ABC.
Borat is back, and now tomorrow, Sacha Baron Cohen live on GMA with a surprise revelation about Borat, something you haven't heard. What will he reveal now? Tomorrow, it happens live on ABC's Good Morning America.
Let's play Millionaire.
Nebraskans have come together in this pandemic, helping keep each other safe. But not Don Bacon. While families are struggling, Bacon would make things even tougher. He wants to raise the retirement age for Nebraska workers. And Bacon supported a plan that could cut Social Security benefits by $3,000 a year. Now, more than ever, Nebraska needs a new representative. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Special interests are planning a heist. They rammed initiatives 429, 430, and 431 onto the ballot, even after the Secretary of State rejected them as unconstitutional. They know if they pull this off, they'll get rich. Even building casinos that pay no state taxes near churches and schools, with no provisions preventing organized crime and money laundering from moving in. Stop special interests from robbing Nebraska. Vote no on initiatives 429, 430, and 431.
This is an ABC News special. Your voice, your vote 2020. Here again, George Stephanopoulos.
Debate season is over, closing in on 11 days now into the final votes of what is almost certain to be a record-breaking American election. That is all for us tonight. Nightline and your late local news are coming up. I'll see you tomorrow on GMA.
It's January 4th, 2021. Socialist Kara Eastman is sworn into Congress. Her first vote makes Pelosi Speaker. Months later, Pelosi passes the $4 trillion tax hike by one vote. Eastman's. The market crashes. By May 3rd, your 401k is dropping like a rock. You wake up. There's still time to stop Kara Eastman from turning your nightmare into a dreadful reality. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
When people are in need, our community steps up to help.
East Hadley Help is partnering with the Food Bank for the Heartland to feed Nebraska and Southwest Iowa families.
You can see the volunteers are putting together those much-needed boxes of food.
Raising over $57,000 to battle food insecurity. Your donations are making a difference, but the need is still there. Contribute now online or text to give. With your support, 7 Can Help is having a positive impact on our community. Operation Football, Fridays on KETV.
The high-stakes showdown in the race for the White House.
But he was way behind us.
The candidates debate one last time before Election Day.
I will take care of this. I will end this.
It looks like winter, and maybe it's going to feel like it too. A hard freeze and snow in the forecast.
Talks heat up over a mask mandate in Sarpy County as COVID-19 cases surge.
This is something we're all taking serious.
Live from 7 Burlington Station, this is Omaha's news leader. KETV News Watch 7 at 10.
President Trump and Joe Biden go on the offensive as they face off for the final time. Thanks for joining us. I'm Julie Cornell.
I'm Rob McCartney. From COVID-19 to election security, the candidates clashed early and often in tonight's presidential debate.
KETV News Watch 7 Sally Kidd leads off our Commitment 2020 coverage with the highlights from Nashville.
We did not see the chaotic interruptions that marked that first debate, but President Trump and Joe Biden did have some sharp exchanges over major policy points. face to face one last time before Election Day.
There's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues.
It's just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about
I'm not
North
a typical
Korea.
politician.
Okay.
That's why I got elected.
The two clashing over the president's handling of the coronavirus pandemic.
It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as president of the United States of America.
Both pitching very different visions for healthcare.
We'll always protect people with pre-existing. So I'd like to terminate Obamacare, come up with a brand new, beautiful health care.
He's been talking about this for a long time. He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan.
On race.
I am the least racist person in this room.
He pours fuel on every single racist fire.
On election security and foreign meddling.
I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin.
There has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia.
The president hammering Biden on unverified allegations that Hunter profited from his father's role as vice president.
All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life.
So a very different tone in this debate, and the question is whether it will be enough to turn things on for the president, who is trailing in many of the battlegrounds. In Washington, I'm Sally Kidd.
With less than 2 weeks to Election Day, the president's campaign rallies in Omaha. Lord Trump calls 2020, quote, the most consequential election yet. You can see her with dozens of supporters at the Marriott near Westroads Mall. Trump warns voters that her father-in-law's work could go to waste if Joe Biden is elected.
If we lose this country now, we may never have a chance to get it back. And that is why this election is so vitally important.
Democrat politician Mark Kennedy Shriver is pushing back on that. He says that the Trump administration is trying to strip health care from millions of people. The Democrat thinks that Biden can bring the country together.
Vice President Biden is trying to bring back that sense of decency, bring back that sense of community that has made America great.
The Nebraska Democratic Party says Laura Trump's, quote, desperate partisan attacks can't erase the sad truth.
Your vote is safe. That's the message tonight from the Douglas County Election Commissioner. This comes as U.S. intelligence agencies say Iran and Russia are trying to influence how you vote. It includes threatening emails like this one, which tells people to change their party affiliation. Brian Cruz says he hasn't heard of anything like that in Douglas County.
It doesn't appear that there was much of a breach or any large-ranging breach, so that gave me confidence in our system.
And that is a message echoed of the FBI. Election Crimes Coordinator Matt Murphy says Douglas County voters should be confident.
We haven't identified any national coordinated voter fraud effort. That doesn't mean we're going to let our guard down.
Yeah, Murphy says the local FBI office will set up a command post on Election Day to investigate voters' concerns.
As Election Day nears, you'll want the KETV mobile app. You can find key dates and deadlines for voting. You can also check out the important races to you and the candidates running in them. Just visit our Commitment 2020 section. It's in the app or KETV.com.
I want to go to the weather now. Cold blast hits the metro, had showers throughout the day, but is there more rain ahead?
Let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Bill Ramby. Hey, Bill.
Yeah, it's not very pleasant this evening, and it's still raining lightly in town, but it is going to break as we head later tonight and also into Friday and Saturday. Check it out. Brain on the camera lens here. This is the camera at the Embassy Suites on 10th Street downtown. It's wet there. 37 degrees, north breeze 14 miles an hour, nearly 100% humidity. 36, 37, 38. Bennington, Omaha, Millard, and Dew Point's mid-30s. So the air is moist. There are the showers on live radar. This goes back 30 minutes. You can see we had a downpour just move through downtown. That moved away. A couple more sprinkles the rest of Douglas and Sarpy County. Heavier rain in pockets. Southeast of Omaha, Shenandoah, over toward Roanoke, east of there to Bedford and Creston and Maryville, Missouri. So the showers will taper off. Temperatures cold into Friday. Snow is looking more and more likely Sunday late and Sunday evening. Shouldn't snow tonight. Temperatures, though, reaching the lower 30s by morning. A very cold start, Rob and Julie.
All right, thanks, Bill. Tonight, 198 intensive care beds are open in Nebraska.
Well, that means 69% of them are full. 71% of all hospital beds are taken. 389 patients are diagnosed with COVID. That is 11 fewer than last night, but a 97% increase from 1 month ago.
In the metro, 176 people with COVID-19 are in the hospital tonight. 18% of medical and surgical beds are open, while 26% of ICU beds are available.
16%. That is the positivity rate for the Sarpy-Cass Health District this week.
During the last 2 weeks, Sarpy County reports nearly the same number of new COVID-19 cases as Lancaster County. County leaders call that concerning.
KETV Newswatch 7's Sarah Feely has that and the effort to slow the spread in Sarpy County.
If you check the Sarpy-Cass COVID-19 dashboard, the health district sits at 25% for their positivity rate. The health department says that's wrong, but 16%, the actual number, is higher than they'd like.
We are looking at it. We're not ignoring it. This is something we're all taking serious.
Bellevue Mayor Rusty Hike says there may be cause for concern in Sarpy County as coronavirus cases climb.
Positivity rate seems like it might be going up a little bit. This morning, Sarah thought it was going to end up being like at 16.4 range.
He's talking about the Sarpy-Cass Health Department Director Sarah Schramm. She outlines the rising cases in a meeting with officials in Sarpy and Cass counties Thursday morning. Hike says the good news is the rolling average is down.
That has actually trended down from a week ago. It was 99 per day, new cases coming in, and it's down to 95.
Hike says communities mix, so mayors from the two counties gave the health director the power to decide a mask mandate.
As our populations transfer back and forth, we shop, Papillion, Bellevue shops, we have Papillion schools in Bellevue, so it doesn't make any sense for Bellevue to have something that Papillion doesn't or vice versa.
In a statement to KETV Newswatch 7, Schramm says state statute gives health departments the ability to identify practices to limit the spread. She adds the state's chief medical officer, Dr. Gary Antone, or DHHS must approve, but says Antone supports the governor's DHM, which does not include a mask mandate. Hike says the data may drive a decision soon.
Talk still isn't quite there. They are talking about the numbers coming up, so I think next week will kind of be a tell-all. We told her we'll stand behind her, whether it's for a mask or not a mask.
Schramm says right now she's encouraging the communities to stay vigilant in washing hands and, of course, avoiding crowds. Hike adds that most businesses do require masks to enter right now anyways. Back to you.
Sarah, thanks. Nebraska confirms 11 more COVID deaths tonight.
And that pushes the death toll statewide to 587. 109 deaths have been reported so far this month. That's 5 lives lost per day. COVID-19 deaths per month have increased for 3 straight months now. Well, Nebraska adds nearly 1,000 new known cases. The positivity rate is 11%.
In Douglas County, 3 more people die from COVID, a woman over 60, 2 men over the age of 75. County also reports 223 new known cases, the 29th straight day with a triple-digit increase.
A record number of COVID-19 patients are in Iowa hospitals tonight. Right now, 536 people are diagnosed. That is up 78% from 1 month ago.
175 intensive care beds are available statewide. 35% of all hospital beds are open. And Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds says hospitals are in good shape.
Right now, the hospitals are assuring us that they have the resources to manage the numbers. We see some fluctuation.
Okay, guys.
We see an all-time high.
Tapos na yung ano
16 more
natin.
COVID deaths are reported tonight.
Okay.
259 this month, and that is nearly
Bye-bye.
12 lives lost every day.
See you
Iowa
on
adds
my
more
next
than
vlog.
2,000
Bye.
cases. The overall positivity rate there tops 12%.
All right, next at 10, the change in leadership at UNO.
A big name takes on a